to welcome everybody for coming, and I want to thank you so much. I'd like to introduce first of all the ladies who made this happen, and I would like them to at least wave and be acknowledged. There's Ann Cook, Helen Chestnut, Val Leger, Dave Martin, and Carol McManus. The six of us actually heard KCarl speak up in Jacksonville a while back, and we were so impressed with him that we decided that we needed to bring him to St. Augustine, St. Johns County. So we got together, and on no money, no funding, just a lot of faith, we worked hard and got some people to fund us and to give us donations, and we want to thank those people. We want to thank the REC in St. Johns County, Randy Covington, and all of you for all of your donations. We really appreciate it, and I don't think you're going to be disappointed. Shoot to Derek Hankerson. Derek is a two-term Putnam County Tea Party chairman and former St. Johns County REC second vice chair. Derek has recently announced his candidacy for the Florida State Senate District 6, and he has requested the honor of introducing our speaker trainer to us tonight. Derek.
Thank you so very much. I just want to say three things. Limited government, less taxes, restore America. I had the pleasure of meeting KCarl Smith about 3 or 4 years ago. Time flies, I can't remember exactly when, but I can tell you where it was. It was at Presidency 5. And P5 was a wonderful event because there were many patriots such as y'all that were in this room to help elect a man who really came from nowhere at that event, and that was Herman Cain. It's interesting when you stop and think about how the conservatives in Florida, who are always called Tea Party folks, are always called names such as bigots and racists, but it's funny they didn't focus or mention that when all of us elected Herman Cain at P5 over Mitt Romney. During the time that I met KCarl Smith, I was with a friend of mine. His name is Ken Mayo. Ken Mayo today is the director for Convention of States. So if you see where I'm going, we need to restore America. We need to listen to people like KCarl Smith, who can not only assist us reach out to the minority communities, but more specifically, the African American community. He runs an organization that is called Frederick Douglass Republicans. And when we talk about the Republican principles in Tea Party, we fail to realize that the Tea Party is very similar, and conservative Republicans are very similar to the radical Republicans of the 1800s. These radical Republicans were men who passed amendments to the Constitution, such as the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, the 19th Amendment, and also passed civil rights legislation. And I have to bring that up because the Democrats have stole that issue for us. On July 2nd of 1964 of this year, we'll be celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. However, those same radical Republicans had passed civil rights legislation in the 1800s. The only difference between the 1800s and 1964 was there were no TV cameras. And the events that happened in St. Augustine turned the tide. Here, without any further ado, I'd like to bring up KCarl Smith, who can talk about how we can continue to recruit conservative candidates such as myself, and more importantly, why we need to elect on August 26th conservative candidates like myself. Thank you, and God bless you.
Can you hear me back? Is that good? Now? Can you hear me? Good? Okay. I won't give you this. Okay, thanks. Let me say that It is an honor for me to be here. I appreciate it very much, the opportunity to come and share a message with you. It is, in addition to the fine barbecue that I had, Dave, appreciate it. You opened up your establishment for this gathering. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for coming. Every time I get a chance to go speak, I go and speak. I'm not going to be like Jonah and go take a cruise. I go speak. And so when God has me to go somewhere, I go. So it's a pleasure to be here. And what I want to do now for the next 2.5, 3 hours, I got to empower you with a message. This is not going to be a bunch of emotional rhetoric, enough emotional rhetoric. We need some empowering strategies. We need some how-tos, not some ought-tos, for what we need to do. We need to know how to do it, correct? Yeah. So when you leave here today, you're going to know how to make a difference in terms of local level engagement, how to talk to your friends, your family members, and your fellow citizens about your conservative values without the fear of them calling you a racist, without the fear saying you don't care about the poor. Okay? And this seminar is workbook generated. I'll be going through this workbook here. If you don't have one, you can get one. If you don't have one, you can take copious notes. But if you have a workbook, you don't have to take copious notes, just got to fill in the blank. Okay? So before I get into the first session, let me kind of give you a quick overview of where we are as conservatives and how we got to get out of this mess that we're in. How many of you do not know anything about the Frederick Douglass Republican message? You're totally unaware of it. You have not. 1, 2, 3. So the rest of you have, correct? Yes. How did you hear about it? In Jacksonville?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So for the benefit of those who have not heard the message, let me quickly get you on the same sheet of music as we get to the training here. The best way to explain the Frederick Douglass Republican message is to dispel 3 myths. Myth number 1 says that the Frederick Douglass Republican message is it is a black membership organization. It is not. To become a Frederick Douglass Republican is not based on your ethnicity or your skin color. It's based on your belief of the 4 in life empowering values of Frederick Douglass, which are respect what? For the Constitution. Respect for the Constitution. Respect for life. The belief in limited government. In other words, I like to keep more of the money that I make. And your belief in personal responsibility. These are the 4 life-empowering values of Frederick Douglass. They're conservative values. I don't call them that. They're life-empowering values. And I'm going to tell you why I don't use the word conservative when I'm out here engaging. So becoming a Frederick Douglass Republican is based on these values, not based on color. Of the 60,000 people right now who've been trained in this methodology that you're going to go through, and they identify themselves as a Frederick Douglass Republican, 59% of them are white conservatives. 59%. It's not about color, it's about values. Okay? That's myth number 1. Myth number 2 is this. The Frederick Douglass Republican methodology of engagement that you're going to learn here tonight. The myth is that it's a methodology on how to engage minorities and black folks. That's not true. It's a methodology on how to engage all Americans, black, Latino, Asian, white, all Americans on the aspect of liberty. If you're going to have a conversation about liberty, Frederick Douglass got to be in the conversation. You follow me? Myth number 3 is this, that because you are a white conservative, you cannot engage somebody of a different ethnicity. In other words, you got to have a black person go talk to another black person about conservatism or the Republican Party in order for them to get it. Or a Latino talk to another Latino. Stop believing that lie. It's not true. You can do it, but you must be trained in something that works. Frederick Douglass Republican methodology engagement. Okay? Now what you notice here, it says Frederick Douglass Institute for Liberty. The Frederick Douglass Republicans, that is my C4 organization. This is my C3 organization. Frederick Douglass Institute for Liberty, strictly educational. Depending on the IRS, I'll probably get that qualification here in the next six to 7 months. But that's me coming out. The website's not up yet. It's not about color, it's about values. Now, I think in Jacksonville, I talked about this before we get into this workshop. We have to understand how we got into the situation where we no longer have the control of the narrative. At one time, the Republican Party and the conservative movement had control of the political narrative and just gave it up. Lost it. Gave it up. And ever since the 1960s, the Democrat has had control of the narrative. They don't plan on giving it up. They don't deserve it, but they got control. So I need to talk about what I call the 800-pound elephant that's in the room. That nobody wants to talk about, but as conservatives, we got to talk about it. As Republicans, if that's your leaning, you need to recognize it. Conservatives and Republicans had control of the narrative and just gave it away, in my view, in the 60s. In 1960, Richard Nixon, when he ran for the presidency, received 32% of the black vote. 32% in 1960. In 1964, the Republican candidate, the nominee for president, received 6%. What happened between 60 and 64? Here's what happened. When LBJ signed the 1964 civil rights legislation into law, your staunch, racist, pro-segregationist Democrats filibustered it, voted against it. There were some Republican senators who also voted against it. One in particular was a guy by the name of Senator Barry Goldwater. Now, Barry Goldwater voted against it not because he was a racist. He voted against it based on constitutional grounds. He went out, sought the advice of a Yale University professor by a guy named Robert Bork. Recognize the name? Robert Bork wrote a 75-page opinion to help Goldwater in his decision. Goldwater voted against the 1964 Civil Rights Act based on Title II and Title VII, which dealt with accommodations and employment. Goldwater was not a racist. He was indeed an integrationist. When Goldwater inherited his family retail hardware store in Arizona, he was one of the first business owners to hire black cashiers and went around the city encouraging other business owners to do likewise. Senator Barry Goldwater was an integrationist. In 1948, he founded the Arizona Air National Guard as an integrated unit. Barry Goldwater was a member of the NAACP, and he helped raise funds to fight the anti-segregation legal challenges. But Barry Goldwater voted against the Civil Rights Act based on constitutional grounds. He sided with the Dixiecrats, not for the same reason, but he voted along with them by voting no and against them. You follow me? Now, follow me and connect the dots as I explain this to you. What was Senator Goldwater's nickname? Mr. Conservative. What was the title of the book that he wrote in 1960? The Conscience of a Conservative. Follow me now. To add insult to injury, at the 1964 Republican Party National Convention at the Cow Palace in San Francisco, who did the Republican Party nominate as their presidential candidate to run against LBJ in '64? Senator Barry Goldwater. The party of Lincoln, the party of emancipation, nominated a person who sided with the Dixiecrats. When that happened, black folks felt alienated. They felt politically homeless. The Republican Party don't want us, and the Democrat Party is worse. At the convention, Jackie Robinson was there in '64. When Jackie Robinson was there, he saw how the black delegates were being mistreated. Some of them were spat on. Black Republican delegates were, now they were not Goldwater delegates, they were Rockefeller delegates. They were spat on, they were called outside their name. One guy's suit was set on, sport coat was set on fire with him in the suit. When Jackie Robinson was interviewed, he was on the floor at the convention. When he was interviewed, he said, "Now I see what it's like to be a Jew in Hitler's Germany." And Jackie Robinson became a Democrat because of that. We had control of the narrative. If the Republican Party could get 32% of the black vote today, the Democrats would never win. Follow me? So black folks felt alienated. That was July 16, 1964. That's the day that Goldwater accepted the party's nomination. The same day that he accepted the nomination, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. issued a press release. 1964. Let's put a pin right there. What happened in 1963? That was the famous "I Have a Dream" speech, the March on Washington. When 1964 came around, Dr. King had a household name. He had a household name, and he issued a press release. In that press release, he said, "It is unfortunate and disastrous that the Republican Party has nominated Senator Barry Goldwater as their presidential candidate." When you go down further into that press release, Dr. King said, while himself not a racist, referring to Goldwater, his philosophy gives aid and comfort to the racists. Then he said, Dr. King said, "I have no alternative but to encourage every Negro and every white person of goodwill to vote against Goldwater." You can Google that press release. He got 6% of the black vote. Now, what Dr. King was saying is this. Dr. King said, Goldwater's not a racist. But Dr. King's problem with Goldwater was this, that Senator Goldwater wanted to be so constitutionally right that he was morally wrong on the civil rights issue. He was morally wrong. And of course, before Senator Goldwater passed away, he said that on one occasion that the way he voted in '64 was a mistake and that he regretted how he had voted. Ever since then, the left, the communist left, has had control of the political narrative. They're calling us racist. They have control of the narrative. They don't deserve to control the narrative. The Democrat Party is a party that gave us Jim Crow. They gave us segregation. They supported slavery in their platform in the 1900s, in the 1800s. But they have control of the narrative. To keep control of the narrative, the communist Democrats, the leadership, see, the rank and file folks don't know what's going on. It's the leadership. They do two things. They accuse and they rewrite history. Democrats, they accuse and they rewrite history. They quickly call us racist. They quickly call us sellouts and Uncle Toms. They accuse us what they're guilty of. Why? To keep control of the narrative. It's demonic. It's a satanic technique. Satan, Revelations 12 and 10, Satan sits at the throne of God all day long, all night long. He's the accuser of the brethren. They rewrite history. Satan rewrites scripture. The left rewrite history. Your homework assignment tonight is only one thing. Go to the Democrat Party's website tonight. Matter of fact, you don't have to. I have a screenshot in the workbook. I'm getting ahead of myself, but I got to point it out right now. On the Democrat Party's website, on the Art History page. Now, you know your history. You know your history of the both parties. That for the 18th century, the Democrat Party, anti-black, anti-civil rights, started the KKK, voted against the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment. But on their website, because they're rewriting history, it says, and I quote, for more than 200 years, we have championed the fight for civil rights. On their website. On their website. They accuse and they rewrite history. So how do we get out of this? How can we gain control of the narrative? And so we can express our values without the fear of being victims of the propaganda machine of the left. How can we fix the Goldwater's mistake? Can't put everything on Goldwater, but that was a major shift. That was a major shift in the voting blocks. How do we get it back and save this nation? What can be done? If we don't find a way how to inspire more blacks, more Asians, because they voted for Obama in great numbers too, more Latinos, more women, and more young people to join the ranks of the conservative movement, we're toast. We're history. We'll never win the White House again. Not recruit, we want to inspire. That's where the RNC is making a mistake. They want to recruit folks to become Republicans. That's not what you want to do. You don't want to recruit anybody to become a Republican. You want to inspire them to vote their values. They can be a Democrat and still vote for your candidate if they vote their values. Inspire them to vote their values, they'll figure out later where they want to land. Getting somebody to become a Republican is almost like getting a Baptist to become a Catholic. Or vice versa. It's the same emotional struggle you're going to go through. Because once you make your change, your family going to be on you. So you don't want to recruit anybody to become a Republican. You want to inspire them to vote their values. Because why? We need people in both political parties with a Frederick Douglass perspective. In both parties. Okay? How do we get it back? Well, so the challenge is this. I kind of alluded to it earlier. We must find a way how to defeat the vile and malicious attacks of the left-wing propaganda machine. There are two battles taking place. You got the battle of ideas and the battle of propaganda. The battle of ideas, that's the second battle. The first battle is the battle of propaganda. That's where we're getting our clock clean. If I perceive you because of propaganda to be a racist, I don't care what the facts are you tell me, or the evidence of truth, I'm not going to listen to a racist. So because we're not winning the propaganda battle. You follow me? How do we fix it? How do we get control of the narrative and get this country back on track based on the values and philosophy of the founding fathers? The answer, the only answer, I can't say the only answer. Yes, I can. The only answer and the best answer is Frederick Douglass. There is no other. There is no other patriotic American that you can bring to the table that have the unique attributes and qualities of Frederick Douglass. Nobody. Nobody. Reagan was never a slave. Douglass was. The founding fathers were never a slave. Douglass was. But in his writings and his speeches, he affirms the founding fathers and he affirms the Constitution, and the left don't have an answer for that. So what you're going to learn today, that the way we take control of the narrative, the way we change hearts and minds, we got to learn how to engage, how to talk to our friends, our family members. Everybody got a liberal in the family. That makes life difficult for you sometimes. So I'm going to try to bring some political healing to your families if we can. So pay close attention. Answers Frederick Douglass. So the first hour, I'm going to get into Douglass a little bit more in depth. After that first hour, you're going to know more about Frederick Douglass than 99.9% of Americans. And that's to our advantage. If you know more about Douglass than they know, and you're in a dialogue, who's framing the narrative? So this poor education system we have is to our benefit. Because they don't teach Douglass. Okay? But you can't be an empty suit now. You got to carefully study and show yourself approved. Okay? The second hour, we're going to get into the Frederick Douglass Republican methodology of engagement. How it works. Why it works. Why is that phrase so important? And what are the psychological dynamics taking place when you use it to engage? How do you use it? The third hour, we got a role play. You got to role play this thing. And that's going to be the fun part. Okay? Of course, I'll get into questions and some answers after each period. I already got 2. Somebody wrote 2 questions down earlier. I do have those questions, by the way. I saw it on the podium. Somebody take it. You got it, Judy? Okay, somebody got 2 questions for me. I like that. Okay, we got the 800-pound elephant. We recognize it. We had control of the narrative. The way we solve our diversity and inclusion problem that we have in the conservative movement, the answer is not by compromising our principles. That's not the answer. We don't need to stop being who we are. Our philosophy, our principles stand the test of time. This is a center-right nation. Most Americans agree with us, but we're not connecting with them. The wall goes up. Most Americans have not given up on conservatism. They have not. I was not converted to conservatism. I've always been one, I just didn't know it. And I grew up in a Democrat household. So let's get into this workbook here. You notice the workbook is fill in the blank. If I skip some of the blanks, or you got to leave and you worry about what was answer number 3 and 4, don't worry about it because there's an answer key in the back of the book. Don't look at it now. You had your opportunity. All right, let's get into Douglass a little bit more. I'm going to give you some tidbits on Douglass that most folks don't know. And offer your perspective on some things that most folks that you're not going to hear anywhere else. Let's get into this a little bit. And since some of you don't have workbooks, I'll keep that in mind as I go through. Frederick Douglass, I'm on page number 3. Frederick Douglass, Frederick, there's 2 E's in his name now. Frederick Douglass was born into slavery in Maryland back in 1817. Some say 1818, some say 1817. Just be consistent. Okay, because he really didn't know. And his birth name was Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey. That was Frederick Douglass's birth name. Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey. Frederick Douglass' father was his slave master, the rumor was. Douglass's daddy was his slave master. Nobody really talked about it, Douglass said, but the understanding was that was his daddy. So Douglass was of mixed race. Okay? Douglass was of mixed race. When Douglass chose Valentine's Day as his birthday. When he was born, he did not know the exact date of his birth. But he picked Valentine's Day as his birthday. The reason why was, when Frederick Douglass was born, I think I'll hold this like this. If I'm screaming, I'm going to lose my voice. I got to speak smart now. When Frederick Douglass was born, he was immediately taken away from his mother. Frederick Douglass' mother lived and worked on a plantation that was 12 miles away where little Freddie was being brought up as a child. So in order to see her baby, after she worked in the fields, it became pitch black. She would have to walk 12 miles to go see little Freddie. And go back 12 more miles before daybreak, before first call. To be ready for the first call, 12 more miles. Douglas said, I can only recall seeing my mother on 4 occasions, but the times when I was with her, she always referred to me as my little Valentine. That is why he picked February 14th as his birthday. Okay? We just, not too long ago, finished Black History Month. The father of Black History Month is Dr. Carter G. Woodson. He is the second person of color to receive a PhD from Harvard University. Dr. Carter G. Woodson started Black History Week. It became so popular, he expanded it to Black History Month. Dr. Carter G. Woodson picked February as Black History Month, not because it's the shortest month of the year. He picked February as Black History Month because of the birthdays of 2 great Americans in the month of February, in his opinion. One being Abraham Lincoln, the other being Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass. Now, you know more about Frederick Douglass than 99.9% of people in this country. Okay? Douglass was separated from his grandmother at the age of 7. I think Douglass' mother died when he was 6. Then he was with his grandmother. His grandmother died when he was 7. I need to put a pin right here and explain something to you here. When you read Douglass' life, Douglass said one of the things that inspired him to one day escape from slavery was the stories he would hear from his grandmother. His grandmother would sit him down and she would say, baby, we haven't always been slaves. Your folks in Africa were originally free. And Douglass said, if my folks were originally free, why am I a slave today? Right then, Douglass said, I started putting a plan together for my escape. I put a pin here because I want to give you a perspective on this whole use of the word Black American versus African American. Most of my notable Black conservative colleagues refuse to call themselves African American. They call themselves a Black American. I call myself an African American. And I got that from Douglass. Let me tell you why. When you tell me that I'm a Black American, what you tell me is that my beginnings began in the United States as a slave. And as a slave, slaves were on entitlements. They were being taken care of. They became shiftless and lazy. No sense of personal responsibility. But when I refer to myself as an African American, then I think about those who came before me, who were self-sufficient, who were not parasites but producers. The term Black, see, what we have to be careful of, we can't allow the left to define the use of our words. The left used African American as a matter of separation. I learned from Douglass, you got to use African American as a matter of inspiration. See, the term Black American connects me to slavery and entitlements. The term African American connects me to liberty and personal responsibility. That is good for the self-esteem development of my children. Let them know that royalty runs in their blood. That you must be serious about your education. You don't take entitlements. You work hard. You don't get that with the Black American frame of thought. So I disagree with my colleagues. I've never been to Africa. But look at me. That's my DNA. Africa is my lineage. America is my home. So for the self-esteem development of my children, and Black children in general, what I got from Douglass was, Douglass recognized that his people in Africa were originally free. Why am I a slave today? So that's a perspective you probably never heard before, but I got that from Douglass. We can't allow the left to determine how we use our words. They use African American as a term of separation. We got to use it as a matter of inspiration. That's the difference. Okay, let's go to page 4. On page 4, you remember the story when the slave master's wife started teaching Douglas the alphabets, and the slave owner comes in, and he discovered that his wife is teaching this words, teaching this nigga how to read, and he stopped her. He said, wait a minute, don't teach this nigga how to read and write, because if you teach him how to read and write, he won't be good for being a slave. So what I have on page 4 is the content of that slave master's comments to his wife when he bawled her out. You can read that up at your leisure. When Douglas was a slave, Douglas had 3 books that he read from. He was a slave for the first 20 years of his life. At the age of 12, Douglas bought this book called The Columbian Orator. The Columbian Orator was a book used by the affluent families in the 1800s. Douglas took 50 cents to buy a copy. The Columbian Orator is a book that has a collection of the great writers and speakers on natural law and liberty. Cicero, George Washington's speeches in there, Benjamin Franklin. And this will help shape his worldview. This book helped shape his worldview. So Douglas had 3 books he read from while he was a slave boy. The Columbian Orator, the Dictionary, and the Bible. A lot of folks don't know that Frederick Douglass was an ordained preacher. He was an AME Zion ordained preacher. At the age of 16, the story is while Douglas was a slave, Douglas got into a 2-hour fight with a slave master. What happened was, Douglas was sent to work for a guy named Mr. Colby. Mr. Colby, by profession, was a slave breaker. Douglas was sent there by his slave master so his spirit could be broken. At the age of 16, Douglas gets into a 2-hour fight. Douglas said, I wasn't trying to hurt him. I was making sure he wasn't going to hurt me. So while they're fighting, one of the white workers came to work that morning on the plantation. And Colby hollers out, come help me, I'm fighting Douglas. Now Douglas is fighting 2 grown men. And what Douglas said was that he kicked the other guy high in the chest. I guess he broke his rib. And the guy was tumbling over to the dirt. Douglas said, I didn't see him no more. The fight continued. This time, I can't think of his, I think his name is Bill. Bill was a free man, black man, working on the plantation. Colby hollers out, come help me, I'm fighting Douglas. Douglas said to Bill, don't you get in this. Oh, Fred, I'm not going to get in it. Colby said, come help me, I'm fighting Douglas. He said, Mr. Colby, you hired me to work in the fields. You didn't hire me to fight Douglas, I see you. So he went on his business. The 3rd person that came to work was a black female. She was actually a slave of Colby's. And Douglas said when she came, he knew it was over with. Because if she did not abide by his instructions, she was going to feel the brunt of not doing so later on. So she came to where they were fighting, did not move, did not get involved, and Colby punched her in the face. They continued to fight. Douglas said he won the fight because Douglas said, I drew blood from him, but he didn't draw any blood from me. That was a turning point in Douglas's life because after 6 months of whipping, Douglas was almost to the point of giving up on the idea of being free and wanting to escape from slavery. That was a turning point in his life because what happened? He conquered his fear. He conquered his fear by fighting Colby. I'm on page 4. Douglas' first attempt from slave was 1836. His first attempt from slave was 1836, but somebody ratted on him, he and 2 other guys. And so 2 years later, he tried again. So 1838, in 1838, he made it good on his second escape. When Douglas escaped from slavery, he escaped from Maryland to New York. That's important because this is why states' rights and federalism is important. He escaped from the slave state of Maryland to the free state of New York. If it had not been for federalism, where could he have gone? He escaped from the slave state of Maryland to the free state of New York. Thank God for federalism. Okay? When Douglas went to New York, he changed his name. In fact, he sent for his wife. On page 4 at the bottom, that's Douglas's first wife, Hannah. That's her picture there on page 4. So he goes to New York. He sends for Anna. Anna comes there. They get married. At that time, he took on the last name of Frederick Johnson. Johnson. And somebody came up to him and said, you know, Frederick, we got a lot of black folks up here named Johnson. You need to find you another name. And one of the guy he was staying with was reading a poem by Sir Walter Scott called Lords of the Valley. Lords of the Valley. And in that poem, there's a character by the name of Douglas. And he said, here's a good name for it. Take on this name, Douglas. And that's why he picked Douglas as his last name. Douglas now spelled his last name with 2 S's, by the way. Not 1 S, 2 S's. Don't ever forget that. 2 S's in Douglas. So Douglas escaped 1838. 1841, Douglas, at the age of 23, he attended an anti-slavery rally. And unexpectedly, he was asked to give a speech. Unexpectedly, about his slave experience. Unexpectedly, he was asked to give a speech. But think about it. What was the book that he bought at the age of 12? The Columbian Orator, a book that teaches you how to be an orator. He was prepared. He read it every day while he was on the plantation. So at the age of 20, even though he was unsuspected, he was prepared. See how when God gives you something to do, God will not only give you the provision, but also, not the vision, but the provision to make it happen. So he was being shaped and formed to even know it. So he gave this speech. William Lloyd Garrison was his mentor for a while. Douglas left William Lloyd Garrison for 3 reasons. Number one, William Lloyd Garrison and the Garrisonians, they were pacifists when it came to the issue of slavery. They believed that the best way to end slavery was through moral exhortation. In other words, the more you preach about it, the more you talk about it, sooner or later folks going to change. Douglas said no. Douglas said the best way to end slavery is through political action. Here's the relationship with Douglas and the Republican Party that folks in the Republican Party don't even know. The Republican Party was started in 1845 to end slavery. It started as a counter to the Democrat Party, 1854. 1841, 14 years before the Republican Party was started, Douglas was speaking about his experience as a slave and the need to abolish slavery. 14 years before the Republican Party was started. The Republican Party was started by abolitionists. Douglas was the face of the abolitionist movement. So he was traveling, talking to people, encouraging them as a catalyst, inspiring them to do something politically to end slavery. As a result, a political party was started, Republican Party. It was started by Charles Sumner, I believe. By Charles Sumner. Douglas is not the founder of the Republican Party. He was an advisor to the founder. Okay? Let's go on here. So when Douglas spoke, he was so articulate that William Lloyd Garrison not only hired him to be a lecturer on the anti-slavery circuit, but when Douglas spoke, he was so articulate that many people thought he was a phony, that he was, in fact, an imposter. There's no way in the world a slave can talk like this that had an extensive vocabulary. Because remember now, he was reading the dictionary while he was a slave boy, practicing his penmanship. He had an extensive vocabulary. There's no way in the world no Negro can talk like this. Douglas said, okay, I'm going to write a book. You think I'm a phony? I'm going to write a book. So in 1845, Douglas writes his first of 3 autobiographies. His first autobiography is entitled The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. And in that autobiography, Douglas gave eyewitness accounts to all the atrocities he saw on the plantation. He gives names, addresses, county locations. When the slave master heard about that, he put a warrant out for Douglas' arrest. Well, he was already a fugitive slave. So the slave master put a warrant out for his arrest. So Douglas went to Europe for 21 months on a tour. I don't think it was a tour, but he had to flee to Europe for 21 months, okay, to let things cool off. While in Europe, 2 sisters, they were involved in the anti-slavery movement in Europe, Anna and Ellen Richardson raised $716.96 to purchase Douglas's freedom with his slave master in the United States. The women in Europe did it, not the abolitionists in the United States. They didn't want Douglas to be free. The abolitionists didn't, because it will hurt on the marketing. Look, come hear the fugitive slave Frederick Douglass speak. It was the people in Europe who raised the money to get Douglas's freedom, not in the United States. Okay? Now, do you see a connection here? Douglas's mother, the women in Europe. Women played a key role in Douglas's life. Remember now, his father was his slave master. So Douglas had no positive male role models around him. He had women and books. That was it. Now, I'm going to go to page Douglas' gifts was writing and speaking. So he owned a couple newspaper companies. One was called the North Star. Abraham Lincoln was one of the subscribers of Douglas's newsletter. I say that because Douglas and Lincoln met on 3 different occasions. They met on 3 different occasions. One time, Lincoln brought Douglas in to be his advisor to discuss with Douglas about a plan in case the North lost the war, an escape plan for the slaves to flee to the North. He brought Douglas in on that. Douglas went to see Lincoln on one occasion. Remember now, the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment was a all-black infantry regiment. Douglas went to Lincoln and said, "You gotta allow blacks to fight for their freedom." And when Lincoln said, "Okay, they can join Union Army," that's when they started the 54th. Douglas was a recruiter for the 54th. Douglas' 2 sons served in that regiment. Douglas volunteered to serve, but only on the one condition. He said, "I'll serve if you commission me as an officer, because I got some management experience." And of course, they weren't going to have any black officers, so they did not allow Douglas to serve. And Douglas said, "Well, you got my boys, so you can't make me an officer. I just continue to do what I'm doing." Okay? I mentioned before, you heard me speak, that Frederick Douglass was an advisor to 5 Republican presidents. 5 Republican presidents. This man never been to school in his life. He was advisor to 5 Republican presidents. Abraham Lincoln, Ulysses S. Grant, James Garfield, Rutherford Hayes, and Benjamin Harrison. Most folks will get a chance to meet one president. He was an advisor to 5 Republican presidents. 5. He was a capitalist. Douglas wrote 3 autobiographies. He was a lecturer. You know, when you think about what Douglas went through, he was I always put it this way, Douglas was a sub-0 percenter. He was born into slavery. When you're born into slavery, you're born below poverty. So he was a sub-0 percenter. He was a slave for the first 47 years of his life, first 20 years of his life. He was a 47 percenter is my point. He was getting that free stuff, free health care, slave master health care. Slave master health care is no different than slave government run health care. Slavery by government is still slavery. Douglas the master took care of Douglas's health care, clothing, shelter, food. I don't know if he had a cell phone, but the cell phone was out back then. He probably had one of those too. But the story doesn't end there is my point. Douglas died a 1 percenter. He had $300,000 in savings when he passed away. Douglas died a multimillionaire. Because $300,000 back then is more than $10 million today. Here's why Frederick Douglass is so important, is because we use him as our vehicle to advance the cause of conservatism. I don't care which victim category that the left will put people in, they cannot out-victimize Frederick Douglass. You can't do it. You can't do it. Frederick Douglass is the bridge over the abyss of racism and class warfare envy that's being created by the communist left. He's the bridge. On page number, if you look at page number 10, with Abraham Lincoln and the picture down to the bottom, you see Douglass sitting across from this lady that's a light-skinned lady. That is Douglas's second wife. That is not a light-skinned black woman. That is a white woman. Douglas' second wife was white. They tried to, when Douglas was asked about why he married this white woman, he said, look. My first wife represents my mother's side of the family. My second wife represents my father's side of the family. That's how he dealt with that. Because his father was white. His father was his slave master. I'm on page number 11. Page number 11 is a recommended reading list. You can take a look at that. The thing I suggest that you do is this. Before you read any biography on Frederick Douglass, read what Frederick Douglass says about himself first. Because some of these biographies I read are not accurate. In particular here, if you read number 7 is a book entitled Douglass and Lincoln, How a Revolutionary Black Leader and a Reluctant Liberator Struggled to End Slavery. Douglass never referred to himself as a revolutionist. He specifically said, I'm a reformer. Douglass said, I don't want to tear up the existing system. I just want to make it better. Those are his exact words. So it just gives you a different perspective when you read what Douglass had to say about himself. Read what Douglass had to say about himself first. On page, like I said, if you're worried about me skipping, don't worry about that because the answer key is in the back of the book. I'm on page number 8. Page 8. This is a list. There are 3 quotes here I pulled up what Douglass says about the Constitution. And I said this in Jacksonville. I got to say it again because this is very important. Thank God that we have a literary legacy of the writings of Frederick Douglass to refute the lies and propaganda of the communist left. Because what I've learned is that the political insight of Frederick Douglass is more important than the political insights of the founding fathers. You heard me say that before? Y'all heard that before? Let me say it again so you don't think I said something strangely. The political insight of Frederick Douglass is more important than the political insights of the founding fathers. Again, here's why I'm saying this. The founding fathers gave us 2 magnificent documents, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, correct? Some of the founding fathers owned slaves. When the Constitution was ratified, that's not when they freed their slaves. The slaves were freed after the death of some of the founders. So when it comes to liberty, the founding fathers are tainted. And the left exploits that. Do they not? They exploit that. They own slaves, therefore they give us a slavery document. Correct? Now, on the other hand, Frederick Douglass did not own any slaves. He was a slave. And in his writings and his speeches, he affirmed the founding fathers and he affirmed the Constitution. And that's what the left does not have an answer for. Douglass writes with having a former slave perspective. You can't call Douglass a racist. He was the victim of racism. You can't say Douglass was Uncle Tom or a sellout. No. He escaped from slavery, and through the Council of Lincoln, signed the Emancipation Proclamation, 4 million blacks were freed from slavery. See, he was not a sellout. So having a literary legacy of the writings of Douglass is key. So we got to pull from that. The problem I have with the RNC, they use Douglass for public relations reasons, but they don't embrace his writings. Oh, let me give you a quote, but they don't know the substance of the quote. You got to go farther than that. You got to get into his writings.
what he said about liberty and why that's important, because we can use this writing, it's his own words, and it's counter to everything that the communist left is doing and what they say about the founding fathers. That's why Douglas is key. What the Republican Party is doing, they talk about Douglas doing Black History Month, and that's it. Well, my point is this. If we're being attacked every day by the communist left, because why? They want to keep control of the narrative. If they're attacking us every day, we got to be on the offense every day. Frederick Douglass puts us on the offense. Don't just use him, embrace him. I'm not angry with the RNC because I met with Rice Priest. I'm not angry with them. I am puzzled by them. Here's why I'm puzzled. You heard of Senator Elvin Guillory, the Louisiana politician out of Louisiana, the Democrat who switched and became a Republican. You know why he switched? For over 3 years, because as a Democrat, Guillory had a very, very conservative voting record. For over 3 years, the Louisiana GOP tried to get him to switch parties. He wouldn't do it. I talked to him in 30 minutes, he decided to switch. Why? I gave him a share with the Frederick Douglass Republican message. This Frederick Douglass Republican message, that's what gave him the inspiration. I'm talking about Guillory. Gave him the inspiration and the grit to come out of the closet. If it can inspire him, a man, a politician who's in a fishbowl, you can use it on anybody. Your friends, your family members, your fellow citizens. You heard of a place called Forsyth, Georgia? Lord have mercy. You know about Forsyth, Georgia? Supposed to be so KKKK haven that one time Oprah Winfrey broadcast her show from Forsyth, Georgia. Last November, they called my organization, asked us to come there and share this Frederick Douglass message and to teach them this message. I couldn't make it because I had a scheduling conflict, so I sent my brother. That's not funny. But I actually had a scheduling conflict. Who's that laughing at me with? Make a long story short is this. My brother, with my behalf, did a magnificent job. We shared with them, no, in fact, what even a training session? We just spoke. They bought copies of the book. They went through the book. In 2 months after we left, they decided they were going to put this Frederick Douglass Republican methodology of engagement into practice. In 2 months, they had inspired 6 blacks to join that local Tea Party. They didn't join as Tea Party activists, they joined as Frederick Douglass Republicans. It gets you out of the closet. It gives you cover. It gives you cover. You follow me? I know about Douglass, I just highlighted some of the things, but there's more into that workbook, just use it as key in the back of the book. I just want to highlight the major points because I want to spend the most of my time dealing with this engagement thing. Now, we're going to take a break, or y'all ready to keep on going? Y'all okay? Y'all want to stand up and stretch? We'll take a break. Yeah. Keep on going? All right, let me take this thing off. We're going to get busy. Okay, this is the second. I don't want to pull this. Okay, can you hear me? All right, you ready? Huh? The Republican methodology of engagement. Why is this thing so powerful? Why does it work? And why does it work better when someone that's not a black American says, I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican? Here is the key. Here is the heart of this whole message. And don't forget this. Frederick Douglass Republican. That's the way God gave it to me. Don't change it. Don't call it Frederick Douglass Libertarian. Don't call it Frederick Douglass Patriot. I'm giving it to you the way Jehovah gave it to me. Frederick Douglass Republican. The reason why that works because that's an oxymoron. It's an oxymoron. The two just don't go together. Frederick Douglass, an icon of liberty. Because we're losing a propaganda battle, Republican, an icon of racism. Frederick Douglass, Republican. When someone hears that, when you are here engaging, if somebody asks you, are you a conservative, what would you say? You just lost. You just lost badly. You might as well say yeehaw. Frederick Douglass, Republican. The word conservative, Tea Party, Republican Party, those words have a negative connotation. We're losing the propaganda battle. We don't have control of the narrative. Those words are synonymous with the word racist. If you call yourself a black conservative, a Tea Party conservative, a Christian conservative, a Reagan conservative, you might as well, it's okay to say that in here, but you are here engaging out in the community, you might as well drop that last word, conservative, and call yourself a black racist, a Tea Party racist, a Reagan racist, a Christian racist. If you call yourself a constitutional conservative, because we're losing the propaganda battle, you might as well call yourself a racist. We're losing the propaganda battle. The left has control of the narrative. They're always attacking. They must attack because they don't stand for truth. They must attack. Every day they wake up attacking. Frederick Douglass, Republican. That is an oxymoron. I used to do liberal talk shows. I don't do them anymore because I'm not invited. But when I go to any talk shows that I do, liberal or conservative, here's first thing you got to remember. This whole Frederick Douglass Republican thing it is easy, but it's not simple. It's easy to understand and grasp that it makes sense. What's not simple about it, you got to get out the closet and practice and do it. Frederick Douglass Republican. As soon as you tell someone you're a Frederick Douglass Republican, there are three things that you must say first in order to take control of the narrative. If you don't say these three things, you will be attacked and you will lose. You never get a chance to change your heart or mind. I was on a liberal show in New Orleans one time. I was a call-in guest. I was on the show for 1 whole hour. The station is so liberal, one of the shows that they air in is Errol Sharpton's show. So you know what the audience was like. I was on the show for a whole hour, and I got 4 phone calls. Do you have your own talk show? Where can I get your book? You got me thinking. Can you come to my church and share the message? Here's what you have to do. Like in the army. Write this down. When I got on that show, I knew I had to set up my perimeter. I got to take away the attack arrows that they're going to use against me. If I take them away, they're going to be listening instead of going to attack you. I am a Frederick Douglass Republican. 3 things you got to say. Number 1, that's not the same thing as Republican. The Republican Party today does not resemble the party of Frederick Douglass. And that's the case. When it was a defender of the Constitution, and it made, okay, that's number 1. Number 2, it made the plight of the poor and the working poor a legislative priority. I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican, not the same thing as Republican. We got to make the plight of the poor a legislative priority. Not in terms of entitlements for a lifetime, but to elevate the poor to become employees and entrepreneurs. Once you help the least of these, everybody else is elevated. And the last thing is this, third one. We need people in both parties with a Frederick Douglass perspective. In other words, we need people with the moral courage to be truth tellers. Those are 3 things you got to say. If you forget to say one of those 3 things and they call you on it or they ask you about it first, even though you may reply in a very strong and positive way, they think they just drew blood because they beat you to it. And the attack is on. or the wall is up. You follow me? No matter where I go, I don't care where I am, whenever I speak, I'm on a show somewhere. KCarl, tell me about yourself. Blah, 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 blah. I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. That's not the same thing as Republican. See, the Republican Party today does not resemble the party of Frederick Douglass. When it was the defender of the Constitution, it made the plight of the poor working a priority in terms of legislation to elevate the poor to become employees and entrepreneurs. And you know what? We need people both with a comparison with the Douglass perspective. You don't need to write this down because it's in the companion guide. If you got a copy of the book, if you got a copy of the book, the companion guide comes with it, and it's in here. I'm going to talk about those two tools in a minute. That's how simple this is. That's how simple it is. So here's the psychological dynamics taking place. And what I learned over 5 years doing is this. When someone that's not an African American says, I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican, in other words, what I'm saying is, it's more powerful when you do it than when I do it. It's this whole Frederick, this whole Frederick Douglass Republican message is more powerful when a white conservative does it than when a black person does it. Why is that the case? Well, what we know is this. By watching MSNBC, that white conservatives are racist. They have no redemptive bone in their body, always racist. Will always be racist. Racist, 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 racist. Just racist. Hate the poor. That's sensitive to the poor. Republicans are racist. Isn't that what they say about us? Yep. Now, once you carefully study and show yourself approved, and you say you're a Frederick Douglass Republican, and what you're saying is, as a Frederick Douglass Republican, my values are identical to Frederick Douglass. I hold this man in high esteem. So if you say that to me, and I've been watching MSNBC, where most liberals get their news, especially the black community, the Latino community, why is this white person talking about Douglass? Now, most folks, like I said, they don't know the substance of Douglass, but they recognize the name. And so when you say I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican, what is this white person talking about Douglass for? What were you talking about Douglass for? When that happens, that's your chance to take control of the narrative. But you got to carefully study, show yourself approved. You got to know what to say. That's when you get a chance to be an informer, an inspiration point in the conversation, not on the defense. That's how you start changing hearts and minds. What is this white person talking about? Why are you talking about Douglass? And what does Douglass have to do with the Republican Party? Now you got a chance to engage. You're framing the discussion, the debate. Karl Rove has it partially right with his airwave attack of political ads going through the airwaves. I call it a Tokyo Rose strategy. That's not how you change hearts and minds. That's not how you win the war. You got to have a powerful ground force in play, a ground force who know how to engage the enemy. That's been empowered, equipped, and trained, and know how to engage. They know how to share their values and trump the race card. Defeat all the propaganda attacks of the left. That's what we got to have. We got to have a ground force. We don't have that now. The RNC strategy is not working. I know personally it's not working. The RNC has hired various folks to do outreach in various ethnic communities, one particular black community. They hired, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10, 12 folks. They call them engagement directors. And it's not working because they're calling me on the down low or behind the scenes asking us to help them with messaging. I said, I can't help you. I don't have time. Go back to your leadership and ask leadership to embrace Douglass totally. Here's what they're doing. They tell them, go to the NAACP meetings, go to the Urban League, and be visible. Be visible. And when you get a chance to go to the microphone, here's what you say. My name is KCarl Smith, and let me tell you why I'm a Republican. Now that's what they're saying, but that's not what the folks are hearing. What people hear is this. My name is KCarl Smith, and let me tell you why I'm a traitor and a sellout to my community. They're calling me and saying, KCarl, we're being brutalized out here. We need Douglas. I said, go talk to Rice Priebus. Go talk to him. He's the leadership. We'll come help you if the leadership buys in. But that ain't gonna, if you're waiting for the RNC cavalry to come, they ain't coming. We're the cavalry. We're the cavalry. They're not coming. And I don't think I want that cavalry to come anyway. Because they're going to mess it up. It's going to take us to fix it. That's why this whole Frederick Douglass thing is a grassroots initiative. The way we improve the RNC, the Republican Party, is from the bottom up, not from the top down. We got enough of top-down stuff. It ain't working. It got to be a bottom-up approach. So by sheer numbers, if the RNC don't wake up with the Frederick Douglass Republican message, they're going to be on the outside looking in because 60,000 people, and we were not even trying to recruit. We didn't know we were growing a movement. We had no idea. We just got getting the emails coming and said, we just started the movement, y'all. And the goal is by 2016 to have a movement consisting of 30 million members. Black, Latino, women, gay, doesn't matter. Why? It's all about liberty. It's about self-governance. Okay? So that's why Douglass is so important. So Frederick Douglass, it is an oxymoron that's powerful because when you say that and people recognize that the two don't go together, they don't know, but they're being elevated from being a superficial observer to a critical thinker. Don't even realize it because they're thinking Frederick Douglass Republican. They don't realize it. You're helping them become a critical thinker. And you got a chance to take control of the narrative. That's how we get it. Frederick Douglass, that oxymoron, that phrase. It's more powerful when you do it than when I do it. So the book, just to show you, tell you about the book is entitled Frederick Douglass Republican, The Movement to Reignite America's Passion for Liberty. It is not a dissertation on the political views of Douglass. It is a conservative action handbook. In that book, I take each of the 4 life empowering values. I take each of the 4, my brother and I painstakingly got our hands on everything we can read that Douglass wrote. Douglass wrote 3 autobiographies. Philip Fodder has a collection of Douglass's writings, about 900 pages, 6-size font. Douglass's writings. Yale University has something called the Douglass Papers, put together by Blassingame, 1,000 pages, 6-size font. Just Douglass's writings. 12 years of Douglass's writings was lost in a fire. Douglass wrote a lot. Douglass wrote more than Dr. King and the Apostle Paul put together. I put in a lot of writing. So what we did, we give you 5 quotes. What did Douglass say about the Constitution? The 5 things that Douglass said about respect for life, limited government, and personal responsibility. That gives you the information you need so you can engage. Let me give you an example. One of the things that the left teaches today in our colleges, I'm a graduate of Historical Black College. I was taught, and is still being taught, that the founding fathers gave us slavery in the Constitution, saying that blacks are 3/5 of a person. That is still being taught. In the book, there's a section called Douglass on the 3/5 clause. 1861, I believe, in March 1861, Douglass was in Glasgow, Scotland. Douglass is the one who gives clarity to the 3/5 clause. 1861. He said, wait a minute. Now, what you got to know about Douglass now, when Douglass first met William Lloyd Garrison, Douglass took on the opinion of the Garrisonians. Douglass himself also thought that the Constitution was a pro-slavery document, and he preached on that. He believed it himself until he did one thing. Very interesting. He did this. He read the Constitution for himself. Then he read the Founding Fathers Convention on it, the Federalist Papers. Then Doug said, wait a minute. Constitution is not a pro-slavery document. It is an anti-slavery document. And the 3/5 clause, he said, oh, by the way, it has nothing to do about the personhood of a black person. But it was a compromise effort used by the Northern Free States upon the Southern Slave States. Douglass wrote about that in a speech, 1861. It's in the book. I want to quickly give you some idea why this whole legacy, the literary legacy of Douglass, is so important for those who don't have the workbook. On page 8, I got several quotes of Douglass on the Constitution. I want to read one of them to you, and let me know if this is does he sound like a moderate to you? I went somewhere, I spoke a guy must be an established Republican. He said, the reason why the establishment don't like Douglas because he said Douglas was a moderate. I said, sir, what are you talking about? Does this sound like a moderate to you? Here's Douglas on the Constitution. He says this, and I quote, in conclusion, let me say, all I ask of the American people is that they live up to the Constitution, adopt its principles, abide its spirit, and enforce its provisions. When this is done, the wounds of our bleeding people will be healed. The chains will no longer rust on their ankles, and their backs will no longer be torn by the bloody lash. And liberty, the glorious birthright of our common humanity, will become the inheritance of all the inhabitants of this highly favored country. That's Doug. It sounds like Reagan. That's a former slave talking. The left don't have an answer for this. The left don't have an answer for this. That's why it is crucial. If we're serious about defending liberty, defending the Constitution, want to bring more diversity to the conservative movement, the Republican Party, Frederick Douglass must be an integral part, everyday part of the message. If not, we're doomed for failure because we have no way to trump the race card. We have no way to refute their lies about rewriting history. Douglass does that. We have no way to defeat the propaganda machine of the left. Douglass trumps the race card. He defeats the class warfare attacks. You know about Douglass and women in terms of how Douglass was respected by women. Because back in 1848, the first ever women's rights convention was held in Seneca Falls, New York. 1848, Susan B. Anthony was there. Sojourner Truth was there. 200 women were there. 32 men also attended, but only one man was invited to speak, Frederick Douglass. He was affectionately referred to as a women's rights man because the women, leaders of the women's suffrage movement, also worked with Douglass in the anti-slavery movement. They were abolitionists. Douglass is so key. So Douglass's story, the truth of his writings, how they refute the left, that's what changes things. Here's the formula for success when it comes to the Frederick Douglass piece. Information plus inspiration equals involvement. Information plus inspiration equals involvement. If you can inform someone about the truth and inspire them with it, they'll get involved in your campaign. They'll support your candidate. They get on fire. Information, that's the writings of Douglass. Inspiration, that's the life of Douglass. You put those two together, and most folks, nobody can out-victimize them, they get involved. Information plus inspiration equals involvement. It worked on my parents. If you can inspire your parents, you can inspire anybody. Anybody. I mean, anybody. That's the message I bring to you. So, this Frederick Douglass Republican piece, it is not exclusive. It is inclusive. It's not based on color, it's based on the values. It's based on values. We want to inspire people to vote their values. Don't care if you're a Democrat. You're going to be a Democrat, that's fine. See, what Republicans don't realize, take that argument off the table. Somebody wants to be a Democrat, fine. Or you vote your values. Fine, be a Democrat. Or you vote your values. That's what happened to my mom. That's why you don't have to be a Republican, but do you have a Frederick Douglass perspective? I didn't have to tell her where to land politically. She realized on her own that the Republican Party best exemplifies her values. I didn't have to tell her that. That's a soul-searching thing people got to do. We want to inspire, not recruit. Inspire folks to vote their values. Because this is the center-right nation. Most folks don't agree with this. So that's the book. The companion guide comes with the book. The companion guide, I'm going to say this because I'm going to give you my testimony, but I'm not here to give slight attention to somebody else's religious practice. I mean, what you worship is what you worship. But I'm going to give you my testimony. When God had set me down and I wrote this companion guide, comes with the book. He sat me down and I studied the ministry of Jesus Christ. When you study Christ's ministry, do you recall how the scribes and the Pharisees tried to trap him, hoping that he would say something damaging so they could accuse him, attack him? That's what the communist liberal left, I think that's bad, that's what the communist socialist left do to us as conservatives, trying to trap us, hoping that we say something damaging so they can call us a racist, so they can call us a sellout, so they can demonize us, so they can discredit us. And what's happening, by them attacking us every day, our reputation has been destroyed. So when you get out here and try to engage, and you say you're a Republican this or a conservative that, the wall goes up. The wall is up. It doesn't matter what the facts are, the truth, and the evidence. It doesn't matter what those are. The wall is up. How do you stop the wall from going up? How do you tear it down? It's through Frederick Douglass. So here's an example. I mentioned to you earlier. You are here engaging. Now, I can say this. I'm not saying you don't use the word conservative. I'm not saying that at all, like Andy Griffith would say. What I'm saying is, you can use it, but you're not going to have a pleasant experience after you use it if you're out here trying to engage. KCarl, are you a conservative? I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. And I believe in the four life and power and values of Frederick Douglass. And like the Christ did, sometimes he will, to that question, he will give a question. And that's what we have to do. Somebody asks you, you're a conservative? I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. I believe in the four life and power and values. Ask them, do you share the values of Douglass? Most Americans will say yes. And you say, guess what? That makes you a conservative, or better still, that makes you a Frederick Douglass Republican, and that's the hook. That's the hook. Frederick Douglass Republican. That oxymoron is powerful. I did not come up with this. I'm here to tell you, I feel like that I have won the lottery. Out of 300 million people plus in this country, God picked me out and gave me this message to deliver. That's what I'm doing. I did not come up with this. I didn't sit in Waffle House and Google this thing, doodle this thing out. God revealed this to me over a period of time. And this is what you have in front of you. You are here engaging. Somebody asks you, are you a Republican? What would you say before you met me? If you say yes, you just lost. The wall is up. Matter of fact, the attack is on. They want to attack. Here's how you stop the attack. KCarl, you're Republican. I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. And there's a difference between the two. The Republican Party does not resemble the party of Frederick Douglass. And we got the Republican Party to recapture its political distinction, get it back to where it was at the time of Douglass, when it was a defender of the Constitution, and it made the plight of the poor a legislative priority. Not in terms of entitlements for a lifetime, but to elevate the poor to become employees and entrepreneurs. You know what? We need people in both parties with a Frederick Douglass perspective. 3 weeks ago, my brother gave a copy of the book to a preacher friend of his in Alabama. He was so inspired by the message. He shared with other 25 black pastors. They called us 2 weeks ago. They want to be trained in the Frederick Douglass Republican message. They want to be trained. Here's why. Here's why. If you have a black congregation, and we're losing the propaganda, right? We're losing the battle. You can't go to your congregants and start talking about conservative this and conservative that. They think you lost your mind. They're going to leave. So it's saying, KCarl, how do we advance our conservative values without using the word conservative? Well, let's call them life and power and values. And it's Frederick Douglass Republican. Got a call. I'm going to Milwaukee Thursday. I leave here Wednesday. I speak tomorrow night. I drive back Birmingham Wednesday. Fly out Thursday morning, go to Milwaukee. 30 black pastors in Milwaukee want to be trained in Frederick Douglass Republican message. 30. I didn't call them. They called us. Folks want to be informed. Folks want to be informed. Sharon Angle. Have you heard the Sharon Angle testimony? I'm going to give it to you again. Sharon Angle's out of the bottom. Remember, Sharon Angle ran against Harry Reid for the Senate seat a few years ago. I met Sharon Angle last summer. Shared the Frederick Douglass Republican message with her. She bought a book. She called me one day, said, KCarl, I have a testimony. The Frederick Douglass Republican methodology works. I said, what's your testimony, Sharon? She said, KCarl, I was in the Reno airport. I was scheduled to fly to Atlanta to meet you there. I was supposed to be in Atlanta. I couldn't make that speaking event either, so I sent my brother. So I didn't see it. So she said, when she was in the airport, 3 women, black women, walked up to Sharon. They recognized her, Sharon Angle. And they said to Mrs. Angle, where are your travels taking you this time? Sharon Angle said, I'm going to try this Frederick Douglass Republican thing out that KCarl talked to me about. And she said, I'm traveling to Atlanta to meet up with a Frederick Douglass Republican friend of mine. The 3 black women looked at Sharon and said, Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was a Republican? Sharon said, yes, he was a Republican, and he believed in 4 life empowering values, respect for the Constitution, respect for life. He believed in limited government, and he believed in personal responsibility. The 3 black women, Sharon said, looked at her and said, can you come to our church and share that message? So now Sharon got to go to a black church to share the message. This is where the RNC has it wrong. The RNC is trying to invite themselves into the black community. You don't go until you get invited. And the reason why you have invited, you don't have a message. You don't have a message. That's why you've been invited. Sharon was invited. Sharon was so empowered, so excited that this white woman has had a chance to gauge somebody of a different ethnicity without the fear of being called a racist, sharing her conservative values through her PAC. Sharon was so excited that through her PAC she bought 10,000 copies of my book so we can keep the message going. That's how excited and powerful she did for her. And it does the same for you. The question is this: how much do you love your children and your grandchildren? How much do you love your nieces and your nephews? How much do you love this country? I say that because you got to get out the closet. You got to get out the conservative closet and get into the arena of political dialogue and exchange without the fear of somebody calling you a racist. Now, when you say you're a Frederick Douglass Republican, that don't mean you're not going to be attacked. Oh, they're going to attack, but you know how to come back, and you can squash it. Here's what I learned. I mentioned the 3 things you got to say when you say Frederick Douglass Republican. The second thing is this: never, ever, when you are here engaging, never, ever allow anybody to call you Republican alone, or conservative alone, or Tea Party alone. Those are attack words. They will attack. I know. I was good at it. I grew up in a Democrat household. Honestly speaking, most of my relatives were Republicans up until 64. Most of my family members were Republicans until 64. Of course, I didn't know anything about that, them being Republicans. I just knew I grew up in a Democrat family. 64, that's all I knew. I think I didn't know they were Republicans until like 5 years ago when I was talking to my dad. I thought you knew. No, you didn't tell me that kind of thing. So, you got to understand those are attack words. Never, ever. When it comes to local level engagement, you are here. It's okay in here. You understand? But out there, it's not okay. They will attack. They must attack. They don't stand for truth. They got to attack. They got to keep control of the narrative. If they lose control of the narrative, it's over with for the left. They're going to go back to France. They're gone. They're out of here. And I see. Go back to France or jump out of windows. I prefer both. Okay? They don't have an answer for this. So I was on a panel one time. Again, I wasn't on a panel in a Tea Party meeting. I was out at a black college. And the 3 guys on the panel, the 4th guy, liberal here, Democrat here, Democrat here. We got a Republican, conservative, KCarl Smith. Sir, call me by my name. I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. That's my political identity. He kept on going, conservative, Republican. No, sir, call me by my name. I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. You did not name my children. You're not going to name me. Call me by my name. I made him call me Frederick Douglass Republican. The whole night. The crowd loved the message. They were listening now instead of attacking. You saw Ben Carson on The View. Dr. Ben Carson was on The View not too long ago. And I sat down and wrote the film down. They tried to trap him. If you notice now, you go back and watch it, they're talking about his speech he gave at the prayer breakfast. The lady sitting there to his left, the black female, she says to Dr. Carson, well, you gave a conservative message. Dr. Carson said, I don't think it was conservative at all. She tried to label him with the word conservative so they could attack. Dr. Carson said, I don't think it was conservative at all. I was just telling the truth. She backed down. They want to attack. Don't you forget that. They want to attack. That's why it's a demonic strategy. It's a demonic technique. I'm not saying the rank and file is doing it. I'm talking about the leadership of the Democrat Party. And we got problems with the leadership of the Republican Party too. The Republican Party ain't perfect. Okay? Makes sense? You think you can do something like this? You got to practice though. When you study Christ's ministry, whenever he responded to a challenge, he never said yes or no to a challenge. He never did. He said, it is written, or he said, I tell you the truth, which means that he knew his history. He knew it. We don't know our history like that. We got to carefully study to show ourselves approved, right? We got to carefully study. You can't be an empty suitor and do this. You can't say, okay, I'm a politician. I need to get some black votes. I'm going to be a friend that does public. You will be discovered quickly, and I'll help discover you. If you come up like that. This is serious stuff because it's a game changer. But you got to be serious about this. You got to put some time into it. You don't have to sit down and study Douglas. That's why my brother and I wrote the book and gave you a cliff notes on Douglas. Okay? We gave you cliff notes on Douglas, and it's not an intimidating read by looking at the book. And we wrote it on a level that homeschoolers can use and understand. It's powerful. It works. We got to be on offense all the time as conservatives. We should be on offense all the time. This allows us to do that. The President Doug's Republican piece. Make sense? Yes. Y'all such a great class. The role play piece, here's how you role play this thing. We're not going to do it tonight, but here's what you do. If you don't have the book and the companion guide, you're at a disadvantage. But in the companion guide, it's broken down by 12 questions. And in the companion guide, identify what the challenge is, give you history on the challenge, and here's how you respond to it. Practice the response. You got to make it personal for yourself. Practice it. But you understand the elements that are there. The three things you got to say when you say Republican, President Doug's Republican. Okay? Make sense? I think, Judy, at this time, let's do a quick Q&A. Let's do a Q&A. I think I hit all the major points that I wanted to cover. Like I said, this is not simple. This is not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. You grasp this. I'm not teaching you conservative values. You already know that. I'm just giving you how to deliver it. That's all this is. That's all this is. Somebody had a sheet of paper on the table. It had 2 questions on it. I think I can remember one of them. I can't remember the second one. How do you respond to someone that says that the Dixiecrats joined the Republican Party? Strong Thurman. Was that the question, somebody? Somebody like that? That is a challenge. Matter of fact, that's one of the challenges in the book. I put it in there. That the Republican Party today is a Democrat Party of old. What they're saying is this, that because of party realignment, when Goldwater received the nomination, when black folks left the Republican Party en masse, that's when the southern states became red overnight. Okay? The southern states became red overnight when that happened. Matter of fact, I read somewhere that, you know Strong Thurman. Strong Thurman was a devout racist. You ought to see some of the video stuff on YouTube. He had a change of heart later on, but he said some strong stuff being captured by cameras. Goldwater recruited him to the Republican Party. Goldwater recruited Thurman to the Republican Party. So now you got some of these Dixiecrats in the Republican Party. Here's how you respond to that. Majority of the Dixiecrats stayed Democrats. to include Al Gore's daddy, Robert Byrd. Here's how you respond to that. And it's this way. Racism has no political face. There's racism in the Republican Party? Yes. Democrat Party? Yes. Tea Party? I never experienced it, but I will not be naive to think it's not there. Because you may have one or two misfits to give the whole organization a bad name. Racism has no political face. The biggest racists I have ever witnessed in my life, I grew up in Alabama, are blacks and how blacks treat each other. I was at Alabama A&M. There's a sorority that had something called the brown paper bag test, meaning that you could not be a member of a particular sorority if your skin tone was darker than a brown grocery store paper bag. You can't get more racist than that. The response is racism has no political face. Here's how you deal with that. Because it came up to me on the show one time. I said, sir, racism has no political face. And you know racism exists. You know it exists. You identify. Question is this, sir. Instead of you finger pointing and insulting and instigating, you know it exists. What are you doing to make a difference? What are you doing to make a difference? If you're not doing anything, shut up. Because you're the problem. That's how you shut it down. The founding fathers, this whole thing about the founding fathers and this paradox. How could these men with a liberty conscience write this racist document? Here's how you answer that. And you answer it this way. And it's not in the companion guide. God gave me this later on. God uses imperfect people to write noble documents. God uses imperfect people to write noble documents. Moses was not perfect. He was a murderer. And God inspired him to write the first 5 books of the Old Testament. King David had his issues with Bathsheba. And God inspired him to write the book of Psalms. The Apostle Paul persecuted the Christians. God inspired him to write the majority of the New Testament. Some of the founding fathers owned slaves. And when he wrote the Constitution, it does not read, we the white people. It reads, we the people. Yeah. God uses noble men, noble people to write noble documents. That's how you answer that. Everybody got issues, but God can still use you, the point. And he used the founding fathers. In the midst of their issues, he did it for Moses, King David, the Apostle Paul, the founding fathers. That shuts them up. When you study the companion guide, the reason why the response is so powerful, in every response I give, I'm standing behind Jehovah, God, or Douglas. KCarl, do you support Barack Obama? See, that's the silver bullet. When they can't get you on anything else, do you support the president? I support President Obama when I think he's right. But I'm not going to spit in my God's face and support him when I think he's wrong. There's nothing you can do to make me do what I used to do. That's how you deal with that. I want to offer this to you too. The Republicans, conservatives, don't know how to critique Obama. What's happening when they critique Obama, you end up getting sympathy votes for Obama. Here's how you critique Obama. The way you critique Obama is the way that Christ critiqued the 7 churches. He said something positive, then he said there's something you got to work on. So with Obama, you got to find something positive. And I'm here to tell you, I can't think of anything administration. I just can't. But here's some things about him that's positive. He has 2 great daughters, 2 nice daughters. He's the first person of color to occupy the highest office in the land. I recognize that. I celebrate that. But I'm not going to let that celebration stop me from giving political critique and start looking for political substance. Amen. How are your policies affecting the poor? How are your policies and legislation in line with the Constitution? You can't stay stuck on historical celebration. You got to start looking for political substance. And critique is a form of love. When Lincoln became president, his first inaugural address, Lincoln supported slavery in the South. And he supported the future of the slave clause. Douglas did not give up on Lincoln. He agitated Lincoln, put pressure on Lincoln. Lincoln started improving as a leader and as a statesman because he was open-minded. Barack Obama, I don't care how much pressure you put on him, how much agitation, he ain't going to change because he's an ideologue. He don't care how much misery, how much poverty he's causing. It's the end game for him, and the end game is communism. So that's a little bit different. But you still got to critique him. Find something positive about his KCarl. We got Patrick that's called in. He's a staunch liberal Democrat. He's going to attack you. I said, okay, let's go back on the air. Get back on the air. Patrick comes online. Sir, I respect you. I said, how you doing, Patrick? I respect you, sir. But I got a question for you. He said, why people want to attack the president? Give him a chance. I said, wait a minute now. What you call attack, I may call it critique. I said, how do you respond when he defunded the historical black colleges by $72 million? You call that attack? He said, you got a point there, brother. That's how you deal with based on practicality. That's all you have to do. It's common sense. Doug was just practical. That's why he is so important. That's why we got to elevate this legacy of this man, get into his writings, and start informing people, start inspiring people. Then you're gonna realize how folks gotta have a change of heart. They're gonna become part of this movement, the conservative movement. It's gonna become more diverse. We don't need to compromise our principles. That's not the answer. You don't compromise, and you don't pander. You don't pander on the same-sex marriage issue. Here's the thing about same-sex marriage. I believe we have our God-given rights of free will. If you want to live that lifestyle, that's fine. I don't support it, but you want to live that lifestyle, that's fine. I don't need to know who's in your bedroom unless it's my wife. That's the only time I need to know something. But here's where I draw the line. No man, no president, no government has the authority to take God's divine definition of marriage and change it in order to please your constituents. That's where I draw the line. And the reason why you want to change it, because you want to remove the shame and the guilt. That's where I have a problem. Somebody living like that, I don't need to know you kissing somebody in front of Chick-fil-A. I don't even know if you got to be kissing somebody in front of Chick-fil-A. Remember they wanted to do that? Get in front of Chick-fil-A and kiss when it was. You remember that? Y'all remember that? Yeah. This makes sense to you? The answer is Douglas. There's no other answer. Before there was Reagan, there was Douglas. Before there was the Republican Party, there was Douglas. And because of Douglas, there was a successful Lincoln. That's the legacy that got to be elevated. Dr. King is not the father of the civil rights movement. He is the son. The father is Frederick Douglass. That's the story that got to be told. And black folks, Latinos, matter of fact, we get the book translated to Spanish, be done probably about another month. But that's how you change hearts and minds. I cannot tell you all the testimonies I received from how. I'll give you an example. My brother got a phone call just last week. This guy, and I think it's John Hilliard. I think his name is John Hilliard. A former Alabama state Democrat senator, state senator. Read the book 2 weeks ago. Went on YouTube, saw all the videos my brother and I did. Called my brother last Wednesday. He said, I'm not a Democrat, I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. He read the book, he said, this is the answer to the race relation problems of this country. The answer is Douglas. This is the answer to save this nation. You heard what the this person is a current executive, upper level executive within WCP, national level. Read the book. Got in contact with my brother. The comment was, if the message in y'all's book gets on a national level, this is 2011, it said, President Obama is history and the Democrat Party is toast. The question is, we got to grow this army. And it's going to be the conservative choir has to do it, because what we're doing right now, I'm traveling the country, I'm doing sessions like this because I am preaching to the choir. I'm preaching to the choir tonight. The choir must be empowered. The choir must be trained. And the choir needs a new song to sing. The choir got to be empowered, equipped, and trained how to go out and get new choir members. diversify this thing. And they need a new song to sing because the song to sing is not working. And the song is the Frederick Douglass Republican melody or the Frederick Douglass Liberty Messenger melody. Can't do it without Douglass. I'll take any challenges on that. Bring me anybody. Nobody brings to the table what Douglass brings. Nobody. That's my message to you. The question is, are you willing to put this thing to practice? Don't send me any messages that, well, KCarl, I haven't tried this thing yet. I don't know if it works. I don't think it's going to work, but you haven't tried. How do you know if it works? Well, you know, don't wait 2 or 3 years from now when you're on your rocking chair on the front porch and your grandchild and granddaughter asks you, well, Dad, what'd you do for the fight of liberty? And you respond to them like Patton responded, well, I shoveled horse dog in Louisiana. So, no, just get this game. We will win. We will win. But now we have a way how we can be on offense all the time and defeat the propaganda attack. That's what this is all about. And it works. You just got to do it. And that's what I share with you tonight. A message of healing for this nation, to bring racial healing to this country, to broaden the base of the conservative movement, and get this country back on track in our lifetime. In our lifetime. If we had 10% of the money Karl Rove would, we could do this thing. But question, you got to do it. You have to do this. You can't sit back and say, okay, when is the right time? Now is the right time. What did Reagan say? If not now, when? If not you, who? You. I appreciate it so much. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate the hospitality. I love your questions. I love you. I love you. Thank you so much. God bless you. God bless you.